My name's Managing Kim, and today I'm going to do a video about Buddhism. That's why I'm wearing this, which I got in Bodh Gaya, the place where the Buddha attained enlightenment. I personally find Buddhism to have quite a lot that's quite useful and helpful in my life, although I probably wouldn't call myself a Buddhist. It certainly influenced me in a big way. I also think that whether you agree with everything it says or not, that there are a lot of core aspects of the Buddhist teaching which I think could be helpful or useful for a lot of people. So here's my attempt to create a kind of introductory guide for the beginner about Buddhism, which many people call a religion, and I suppose in some ways it is, but I think also, given that it's a non-theistic religion, it can also be viewed as pretty much as a philosophy, or even a self-help kind of teaching. So yeah, so to begin, Buddhism. I guess to start with, I have to give a short summary of the Buddha's life. The person of the Buddha is not the essential thing about Buddhism, it's the teaching. So really I want to get as quickly as possible to the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path, which is the absolute core of Buddhism. But let's start with the brief summary of the life of the Buddha. The Buddha lived, I guess, 5th or 6th century BC in India, in North India, and he was raised, so the story goes, I'm not sure how factually accurate the entire Buddha story is, but like I said, it's not really important. The point is the teaching. But yeah, it's said that he was brought up as a prince by King Sadhudana. I don't know if I pronounced that right. His name was actually, the Buddha's name was actually Siddhartha Gautama. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing these things right, but he was raised as a prince, and it was prophesied that he would either become a great king or a holy man that renounced material things. The king wanted his son to be a king, so, and the prophecy said which one he would become would be dependent on whether he saw the view from outside the palace. So in order to make sure that his son became a king, King Sadhudana kept him basically restricted to the palace and not allowed to walk outside. But the Buddha, he disobeyed his father and snuck out at about the age of 29, and famously saw these 4 sights. He saw an old man, old and infirm and frail. He saw a sick man, diseased and in a lot of pain, and he saw a corpse, a dead body, and he also saw a holy man who seemed to be at peace with the world. And following these 4 sights, the Buddha became troubled about suffering in the world and what causes suffering and how we can end suffering, and also, I suppose, inspired by the holy man who seemed to be at peace. The Buddha went on a bit of a spiritual quest, and he tried various religious practices, eventually not finding the answers he sought, till he gravitated to more extreme practices, so that he was mortifying his flesh and fasting, and he almost starved himself to death, but he still didn't see the answers he sought about suffering, why there is suffering, and what we can do about it. So a village girl, he nearly starved to death, a village girl offered him rice and milk, and he took it and became healthy again. He then decided that the middle way was best, not the extremes of self-indulgence and sensory pleasures, nor the extreme of self-mortification and fasting like he had been doing, but a middle path. And in the end, what he decided to do, he sat down at the Bodhi tree, as it's known, a sacred fig tree. He sat down there and decided, I'm not leaving this place until I've found the answers I'm seeking. So he basically sat there and he meditated for days, until he eventually formulated this philosophy, this teaching, these ideas, that he then proceeded to tell others about. His first sermon was in Sarnath, which I've also been to. So let's get to the teaching, because that's the important bit. Basically, there are the 4 Noble Truths. Truth number 1 is dukkha. It's the truth of suffering. That in life, life is pervaded with suffering. But yeah, dukkha is suffering. It's the sense that something's not right in life. From very extreme, obvious examples where people suffer to like more, I guess, fairly more trivial aspects of it, but where you just feel there's something not right about life. It's not a happy experience overall. So the second noble truth is that the cause of suffering can be known, and that cause seems to be something that the word in Sanskrit, I think that's, or whatever language it was the Buddha spoke, is tanha, which is often it's often translated as craving or attachment, though it literally means thirst. But yeah, the cause of dukkha, of suffering, is believed to be a thirst. But yeah, tanha, this thirst, it's attachment. It is this wanting pleasurable experiences, but also wanting, and I suppose an avoidance of painful experiences, but also wanting to be certain things. So the third noble truth is that there is a way that suffering can be ended. There is a possibility of a cessation of suffering. And the fourth noble truth is that there is a way to do this, and that way is the eightfold path. So, what's the eightfold path? The first part of the eightfold path is right view. Right view consists of a number of different things. I mean, obviously right view is looking at things the right way, in the correct way, in the truthful way in which they actually are, and you know, getting rid of some of the delusions we all commonly suffer from. The threefold nature of right view is really that right view includes knowledge of karma, that's basically what actions you do, positive or negative, will reap positive or negative effects when they don't. I know that it's common, particularly amongst Christians, when they criticise Buddhism, to say that, you know, good things don't always come to good people, and bad things don't always come to bad people. It is true that bad things go around and they can hit anyone, and bad things can happen to seemingly good people. It's also true that seemingly bad people can get away with bad things and nothing bad happens to them. But that's when they escape human justice. I think there are sometimes hidden invisible ways in which bad things come back on bad people. Because I do think that despite a certain amount of randomness and a certain amount of apparent unfairness to the nature of things, that generally speaking, it is true that the more you do good things, the more people think good of you and want to do good things back to you. There's a positive reaping, and the more you do bad things, the more bad stuff will come back on you. Because there's a kind of negative reaping as well. There does seem to be, generally as a trend, yes, there are chaotic, unfair things in the world as well, but generally as a trend, it is true, you know, that what you send out is what comes reflected back to you. Anyway, karma is one of those things. And it might not happen immediately, see, it can be down the line. So, anyway, the other two things, parts of right view, are the knowledge of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Everything changes, everything fades. Everything. There's no permanence to yourself or to any of the sensory objects or other things that you might encounter in your life. Knowing this can cause a good deal of pain, which is part of the tanha, the thirst, is a desire to grasp onto things to make them last forever, but nothing lasts forever. That's another part of right view, is knowing that things are impermanent. And another part of right view is the knowledge of suffering, which we've already covered in the Four Noble Truths anyway. So yeah, that's right view. Right intention is really the right approach to all of this, a commitment to a spiritual path, a commitment to trying to end delusion and suffering in this world for yourself, not just yourself but others too. A real commitment to, you know, we're all in this mess together. I'm going to do my bit to try and alleviate some of that messiness of life. It's basically the compassionate commitment to the spiritual path, the right intention. Then there's right speech. Now this is where this stuff blows me away, where the way Buddhism talks about right speech. I mean, one obvious example of right speech is telling truth and not lying, not deceit, not adding to the deceit or the delusion in life by telling untruth to yourself. Try and make every word you speak truthful. Obviously that's something a lot of religions teach. Here's where it blows me away. It's also not having divisive speech, which is like gossiping and hearsay. It's like you'll hear someone say something about someone else and you'll take it as truth, I suppose, and then pass it on, but you don't know. All you're hearing from that person is what that person's saying about someone else. You're not actually learned anything really about that other person. It's so often in life we say things that have been passed on to us, and then it gets passed around and blah blah blah, and it's Chinese whispers, and it increases. It's not only divisive as in it sets people against each other, because it's opinion. You're hearing opinion and then you're spreading on opinion. It's not fact, it's opinion. But also, I mean, it adds to the possibility of falsehood and misunderstandings, and another obvious one is refraining from abusive speech. Try and make your words compassionate, try and make them positive, try not to knock people down all the time. The point, I suppose, is that your speech should increase clarity, not increase confusion. Then the fourth part of the Eightfold Path is right action, and this is broken down into three. One is the not taking of, not causing harm to or taking the life of another being, which does include animals. Another part of right action is not stealing, not taking that which doesn't belong to you, and the other part is is sexual immorality. Now, when a Westerner hears this, without bringing in Christianity, we tend to fear the worst. But in Buddhism, the thing about not engaging in illicit sex, as it might be called, is similar to the stealing one. It's about not taking what doesn't belong to you. Now, in the past, in that past era, it was in terms of those who are under the protection of their fathers or mothers or brothers or whatever, because I suppose, much like the biblical times in the West, women were seen as property in those ages. But to reinterpret that for a modern age, where we view things a little bit differently to that, I guess you can conclude that taking what doesn't belong to you, it can include those under the protection of their parents, in the sense of children, obviously, but it can also include those who are in monogamous relationships. It also includes consent, because if you have sex with someone against their consent, then you're taking something that doesn't belong to you. The fifth part of the Eightfold Path is right livelihood. Now, this is about what careers and occupations you should undertake, or you shouldn't undertake. I think it's more important than just isolating specific career paths that you shouldn't do because of this. It's more like, let's look at my work life. It's what I spend a huge amount of my time doing, and I'm contributing to a thing in the world when I'm contributing to work. So it's just about, look at your work, view it ethically. Is it ethical? Am I harming people? Am I somehow acting dishonestly with people as a result of doing this work? Does it stand in the way of my own spiritual progress or the spiritual progress of others? And it's just like, I'm not sure it's meant to be a strict kind of, you must not do this sort of work. It's more just like, examine your work life. Is it ethical? It's part of living consciously, I think, not just going through the motions of life without thinking about it, but think about it, Ideally, your work should reflect who you are. It should be something you're proud that that's what you do. So, then the sixth part of the Eightfold Path is right effort. This is again where Buddhism is like, it's so psychologically healthy. This is about abandoning harmful and unhealthy thoughts and words and deeds and embracing positive ones. How did I put it in my notes here? Yes, making an attempt to abandon wrong and harmful thoughts, words, and deeds, and make an attempt to give rise to good and useful thoughts, words, and deeds. This can have many connotations, of course, and can just be about compassion towards others and living a good life. But when it says thoughts and words and deeds, you know what? It makes me think of when you think unhealthy things about yourself, or others, admittedly as well, but just negative thoughts in your head, and how they're, and how they can destroy your life experience, and the life experience of those who you affect. Whereas you should cultivate positive thoughts that have the more positive effect on yourself and those around you. Then the seventh part of the Eightfold Path is right awareness, and this is really just consciousness, living in the moment, not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future all the time, but living in the moment, here and now, and just consciously living at every moment of your life. Being aware of what you're doing. It's having the awareness and the thoughtfulness to be in this moment now, and not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, but concentrating on what you're doing now. Because that's how you create a good future. That's how you move on from your past. You live now. And then finally, the eighth part is right concentration or right meditation. And this is the act of meditation. What Buddhists do, they focus on, sometimes on visual objects, sometimes on a visual object, or sometimes on the awareness of your own body, and sometimes on mantras, repetitive phrases that you'll say over and over. But the point of all of this is to basically shut out all the distracting thoughts and just have a moment of just being. Anyway, that's my understanding of it, at least. So anyway, eventually, at the age of 80, the Buddha did pass on. He died. But I want to talk about some of the concepts Buddhism has about life and death and rebirth. It's this concept of samsara, which means continuous movement, and it refers to the wheel of rebirth. I mean, there's a lot of beliefs about, you've got the hungry ghosts and the heavens and the hells within this wheel, as well as animals and humans. You don't have to take that totally literally, but the point is that things move around and affect one another. The concept of rebirth is often misunderstood as reincarnation, that there's a soul that goes from one life to another. Buddhists don't actually believe in souls. They don't believe in any permanent self that a person has like that. But they do believe in karma, you see, which is the cause and effect, that things impact on other things and cause other things. And the whole rebirth thing, supposedly, the cravings, the thirsts, the karmic the karmic effects of a person's life will then impact on another life in a causal way, like that. Even though there's no continuous self that goes from life to life. This is a kind of a hard concept to understand. I think it's supposed to be somewhat a mystery. Buddhists themselves talk in terms of, it's like when a flame goes from one candle to another. It's a distinct. It's neither identical nor completely distinct. There's a causal link from the one to the other. Like it's the same flame passing over, but is it? It's still not. It's a different flame. I think in much the same way as that, it's supposed to be a kind of a mystery. Personally, I think it fits in with what I've always thought about reincarnation, if you want to call it that it's actually a metaphor for the connectedness of all things. We're part of a universe. I've talked about this in my agnostic pantheism video, that consciousness is a kind of connectedness, and that all things in the universe are connected with each other. Well, that is exactly what Buddhists would say about that. They might not frame it as consciousness, but that's where I was at being agnostic anyway. Your choices and your decisions and actions do impact on other lives and other things that will carry on after you've gone. And so maybe it's just a recognition of that. Nirvana is synonymous with enlightenment. It's this state of awareness, this state of understanding of the way that things are, which involves the cessation of suffering for that person, the extinguishing of thirst. And when a person is in a nirvana state, they become a Buddha. The Buddha is actually just a title, it means enlightened one. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, but he was the Buddha. But yeah, when a person becomes enlightened, when they achieve nirvana, they become a Buddha. When someone in that state dies, they enter a state called parinirvana. There's no more rebirth. They've been released from samsara. Yeah, really, Buddhism doesn't believe in a god, certainly not in that creator god kind of way. They're within the whole wheel of life thing there are gods, but they're believed to be beings that are themselves on this cosmic wheel of rebirth, if you like. So, do Buddhists have to be vegetarians? Apparently the Buddha was not a vegetarian, and neither did he teach his disciples to be. Apparently it's all about this concept of causing direct harm to creatures. If you kill a creature, then I suppose that's not in keeping with the Buddhist precepts of what you should be doing, but to aid in enlightenment. But indirect harm is kind of hard. It's hard not to cause indirect harm to animals. When you eat vegetables, you are eating vegetables contributes to the death of animals, because the crops are sprayed with insecticides that kill insects. And when you have leather handbags and shoes, it's hard to live a life where you don't in some way contribute to the death of living creatures, but it's indirect. I suppose the Buddhist thing is not to cause direct harm to a living being. That's Buddhism. That's my introduction to Buddhism. I've not gone into the various different schools of Buddhism. There are Theravada, Mahayana schools, and various forms of Mahayana schools in China and Japan and Tibet, and there's all sorts of different types of Buddhism. That would be overcomplicating things. And anyway, I'm only a beginner myself. I don't fully understand all those different types of Buddhism. This has just been an introductory kind of guide to the beginner about a philosophy that I feel is very useful and helpful for mankind, and I've found has inspired and influenced me personally, even though I don't actually call myself a Buddhist as such. So that's Buddhism. Thank you.